Hello, everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women. And we have an initiative called Lean and Agile 100 for Women. And it's also called LIA100, where we bring phenomenal women leaders, thought leaders, the women who have believed in themselves and can, contribute significantly towards the Agile community to this forum. And as part of these initiatives under LIA, we are bringing in, the women who can, communicate their struggles, their triumphs with the community. And it's our honor to bring all these great women to the audience here. And this interview that we are doing today is part of that initiative, LIA 100. And I'm so thrilled and honored to bring a very enthusiastic, energetic leader. She is an internationally renowned speaker, author, and a very valuable contributor to the Agile community. She has served as a member of board of directors of Scrum Alliance. She's the founder of Agility Associate, and she co-chaired, chaired, and organized several Agile conferences. She's the founder of Agile Prague, which is celebrating, in fact, their 10th anniversary in 2020. So they're in the ninth year of the conference this year. She's a great coach, very well respected by the community, very approachable. I've met her in 2017 during Business Agility Conference, and she's very approachable, very friendly, and very relatable. She's super energetic. And she's also the author of the only Czech language book on Agile. And she's authored 2 books so far, but the only Czech language book is written by her. It's co-authored by her. And it's my pleasure, absolute pleasure, to invite Zuzi Sochova from Prague to this interview. Hey, Zuzi, welcome
Hello.
to LIA100.
Thank you for that nice words for the introduction. That's so kind of you.
Absolutely. And when I first met you in 2017 Business Agility Conference,
Mm-hmm.
I think you stepped in as one of the facilitators. That was my first experience with you. And it was just a phenomenal journey since then.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, I think, your ability to communicate and reach out is just phenomenal. So thank you for being in the community and contributing to the community.
Well, thank you.
All right, so we'll jump right in then, Zuzi. I want to talk a little bit about your books. Okay, I want to really start with that because I know your first book, The Great Scrum Master, is very well received by the audience, and I've seen that as a reference book for most Scrum Masters as they use it. Tell us how you got started on this book, and most importantly, if you can focus on when you started to even think about writing a book. What was it like, and what are some of the thoughts that raced in your mind?
Mm-hmm. So I think you mentioned this first checkbook, right? So that was my trial because I started to write blogs many, many years back, Czech language. And then because people kind of read it, then I thought I should write a book because there was like missing on that market in that language. And again, people likes it, right? It's kind of this weird thing that you wrote something which you don't even know if you want to read after yourself again, because that's the weirdest thing, right? Yeah. And then the people are coming and saying like they're using this book, etc. So from that experiment kind of thing, I knew my next book needs to be in English for something more advanced. And because I've been teaching a lot of Scrum Master classes, this certified Scrum Master classes with Scrum Alliance, and coaching a lot of Scrum Masters, I realized that at the end of the day, they have those same misunderstanding and those same misconceptions. And I was so proud at a certain point of a time. I was so like proud on what I am telling them and seeing their eyes at the class or at these coaching events, right? Like, oh, wow, I should have known it earlier. And that was really good. Thank you for, showing me this journey or whatever. And I was like, that's cool, I did a great job. And then you've paused and you've thought about it. And then I was like, hey, but how many Scrum Masters am I ever in my life going to teach? How many of those will show up at my classes? Well, not many eventually, right? I mean, some, right? But not many. So am I really changing the world? Am I really helping them as a community? And I thought about that I actually have to write it in a book because there would be people who would never actually show up at any certification class and he would never be around me for coaching. But I still felt I have this urge of spreading the message around and making it widely available. So I wrote this book.
That's awesome. And as you said, I think the message that I'm kind of trying to understand here is, though we have the apprehension before you can not just write a book, but communicate in the form of a piece of writing. It could be a blog, it could be a message.
Mm-hmm.
Do not withhold. Is that the message? Because you never know who it reaches out to.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And what were some of the internal dialogues that went through your mind, Zuzi, as you were writing your first book? Did you have a dialogue with yourself?
The first one, not really. The second one with a great Scrum Master, yes. I knew that doing a book in English is much more harder because it doesn't have that uniqueness on write a book on a subject which is no one ever wrote in that language is easier because you knew even if no one would publish it, people will find it and you can just spread it around. But
Yeah.
writing a book on Scrum Masters, even if I believe there is no book on Scrum Masters really focused existing, I still didn't know if I managed to make it because I didn't write it for a couple of my friends because they would show up at the classes anyway. I wrote it more for that general public which will never meet me even. And I knew from my first experience with the first Czech language book that I need to find a publisher, but I didn't know how. So I was like, okay, so I just self-publish and see what happened. So yeah, and I was really really lucky because I met with Mike Cohn and he recommended me to his series with this book. So I got really super lucky. And being part of that series, it's really great because there are so many wonderful books from Lisa Atkins, these Agile coaching teams, right? And this new Craig and Bess on less large scaling Scrum.
Yeah.
Things like that, right? And there are many other titles, like a couple of Mycon's books, really wonderful things, right? So I felt like I would never think, I would be part of that wonderful group of authors. So
And
that's
here you are.
awesome.
You are.
Yeah, now I am, but I still can't believe it in a way, right? It's
And I think it all started with a humble beginning, believing in yourself that
yeah.
it will work. I think that first step is very challenging for most women, and that's the message that we are trying to share here through these interviews. That the first step might not always be very smooth, but still feel the fear, but do it anyway.
Yeah,
Right?
I just didn't think about it that much, right? I just said, hey, I need to write a book. So I write a book. Should I write a blogs, which I'm doing anyway? So I just took those ideas into a more structured way and covered them in a book.
Yeah.
The most difficult part was, go through all these language corrections and these design things, etc., and make it ready for printing. But otherwise, you know what? You're just writing, right?
Yeah. No, that's actually very motivating. Thanks for sharing that, Zuzi. And we wish and we really hope and encourage most women to, have that mindset and just keep going.
I think it's really just start with a passion, right? If you have a passion for that topic, you just finish it and you don't care that much about what shall I do if and how exactly. You just do whatever you truly believe in and then you let it go and see if it works or not.
Yeah. Take that first step and then, it just moves organically forward.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I was just mentioning that you are one of the founders of Agile Prague. And this year, 2019, is the 9th anniversary of that conference, and 2020
That's right.
celebrating the 10th one. And I would like to understand, Zuzi, because it was not very easy, or Agile conferences were not very popular a decade ago in Europe, especially. And you took that first giant leap in starting this conference. And can you share us with, with the focus about what it took to start this conference, and what was it like to bring it to a 10th anniversary next year? What was the journey like?
I think it's still the same thing. I started together with a couple other people, the Czech Agile community, running those, we call it open cafe, like a free meetups, right? Regularly for people to talk about Agile, because we want to spread the message around. And I always, for some reason, I like to speak at the conferences because I meet those wonderful people, and I felt it's missing in the Czech Republic specifically because, when I started to talk about Agile, no one really cared about it. No one knows about it a couple of years back. So I thought like this conference can make a difference, right? Because there is a thing in the US, if you travel like, from one state to another, you don't care, you got used to it. In Czech, if somebody would tell you, hey, you can go to Germany, or you can go, which is quite short distance in general, right? 2 hours flight, whatever, 2 hours drive.
Right.
They would say, no, it's a different country. We are not traveling. And there might be differences across Europe. Some people might be more open to travel, etc. But in Czech specifically, people haven't been used to travel that much for like conferences, events, etc. I'm one of the few people who really love traveling, so I'm like all around the places. But there was one of those things that I thought I need to bring it back and bring it to them. And I didn't actually start at Agile Prague the first year. The first year we actually managed to get a track at some another conference. It's called Web Expo, and it's mostly focused on the developers and on the web and internet kind of thing. Now they shifted their focus towards like innovations, etc. a lot. But at that time, it was really like for developers. And we got this one track on Agile. And I realized I like it. It was kind of safe to try because you didn't have to organize the entire conference. You just organize this one track. And people likes it. I like it. So I find another like 2 people and say, hey, we have to do our own conference. And they say, okay, well, why not? We can do it. That was fun. One of them has been speaking at that channel, that track, right? So he knew what is it about. The other one was running this those meetups with me for a long time. So we just did it, and it was from that time on. I think I found a really great group, right? Both Pavel and Eda are really like supportive and to my some crazy ideas, and it worked really well. So we keep going, and we actually Agile Prague shifted a lot because it used to be all the time it was all in English because I knew I have to get international speakers to keep the quality high. But we've got mostly Czech audience the first few years. This year and last year, etc., it's like growing more towards international audience. So currently for this year, I've seen some people coming from Canada, some people, of course, from US as usually, but we've got some people from South Africa, we've got the people from New Zealand even coming. It's kind of like awesome, right? How do you get, and of course, all around Europe, right? Like, but that haven't been the case at the beginning. So I think for any reason, people likes it. So that's the best, keep going, right? Because otherwise, sometimes, like if you ask me right before the conference, I'm like tired. I don't want to hear about the next year. And I feel like, you know what, I don't care. But then, of course, it's over and you feel like it worked again. People show up. They mostly like it. And we just have to do it again. Like this.
Awesome. That's awesome. And did you see, what kind of trend did you observe in the past decade, especially, what was the participation from women like? And we are talking about gender balance today, but, just that willingness to come in, participate, and contribute.
I think you see more women coming to those conferences. You see more women speaking at the conferences in general, right?
Right, right.
Eastern Europe is kind of different. So, for example, if you go to CSM class, we would have in Prague like 2, 3, 4, 5 people out of, I don't know, 10, 20
Yeah.
women. If you do the classes in the US, it's like my last class yesterday got even more women than men.
Hmm.
So it's really different. I think what the Eastern Bloc is kind of still struggling with is that certain education is expected to be for boys. So I've been studying all my life. I've been in high school, which was highly technical. I studied telecommunication and some hardware kind of thing. For university, I took over the computer science and computer graphics at the end for my master. And I was all of this at high school. We've been 3 girls in a class.
Wow.
On a university, I've been at the end like the only one out of like 150 boys in that stream. There've been some other girls on hardware, but
That's
not really
interesting.
many.
That's
So
interesting. One out of
yeah,
100.
so that's the background of Eastern Europe, and it's kind of Eastern Central Europe, the same thing. So now I think it's shifting a bit, but it will still take like a one generation to kind
Yeah.
of change those things, because this typical thing, which is like saying in a society, would be, oh, you're a girl, you would not be good at mathematics, right? And if your parents keep saying that, mine didn't, by the way, so that's why I love mathematics. That's why I took this technical journey. But most of the like society would be saying that, right? And it's in fact the decisions of the people. So, for example, when I was at school, we've been having those boys doing those construction, like trying some construction work, and we've been learning how to do some like cooking
Yeah.
classes, etc. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. But at that time, you're speaking about
Yeah.
many years back, that was the normal way of doing things. And that shifted for us. So that's a shift which is happening in a society. It's not that strong anymore. So I think in like 20 different in Agile Prague. I think we always give a chance to people who we don't know. So we have this mixture of a lot of speakers got invited because I've seen them speaking somewhere. Then some speakers got invited because we got a recommendation to them.
Yeah.
And I've been, for example, working with Yves, and he's been recommending me 1 year, like a really huge amount of women, which was like awesome. So I'm still
Awesome.
having that list, and time to time I, reach to them again. And what there is one tip, if you want to be accepted at the conference, and you might not have a talk yet. It might be your first one. Well, there is a higher chance if you do 1 minute video and talk about the subject, just like this we are talking right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It makes, because there is a different scale. Some people can write a wonderful abstract and then they can't speak at all, like complete no way. And
Right.
then some people, can't write an abstract, but they're wonderful speakers.
Yes.
So we don't care that much about that abstract because it doesn't really tell us if that's going to be a great speaker. I mean, the topic, yes. But then we usually try to search, is there a video that you've been speaking, maybe about a different topic, doesn't really matter. But we want
Yeah.
to see you, hear you speaking. If you don't have that, if you do, for conference organizers, this kind of a 1 minute, hey, I'm Zuzi, and I'm passionate about Agile HR. And
Yeah.
if you want me, I'm going to tell you this, this, and that. Well, then, you know what? There is a higher chance people would accept you.
No, thank you for that tip, Zuzi. I think,
Mm.
most audience probably will.
Yeah, I learned it from, I've been once chairing the Scrum gathering in Prague, right? And we made it like one of those recommended things, and it really makes a difference. The problem is that people don't like to do it because it's a lot of work, I guess.
Well, 1 minute videos is, I think you should be very intentional about it. It's not too much work, but as you said, I think it just takes, the proposal to a whole new level.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
thanks for taking that, tip out.
That's true.
Awesome. From your toolkit. Awesome. I know that you travel quite a bit, Zuzi. You're a trainer, you're a CST, so you train, quite a few Scrum Alliance courses across the world.
Yeah.
Conferences, I see you speaking at most conferences, at least. I open a speakers list and I see Zuzi. So you're a very, very active speaker, which is great because, you take the time and effort to really contribute and share your views and thoughts. One thing that really, strikes me is how do you keep the balance, your work-life balance with so much travel, so much work, and you still keep up this great positive attitude. How do you keep up the balance, which most women struggle with, by the way?
Yeah, well, when I got my daughter, I've got this, she's now 5 years old, and I've got this internal like fight, should I be at home? And, in the US, you're not that much at home, right? You have like 2 weeks
Yeah.
holiday, something, right? So we usually, in my country, people usually stay at least 2 years. And many of those more than 2 years, like 4 even, at home with the kid.
Oh, you
So
mean
you need to,
after a child? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
after the child is born, you have like 2 years or 3 years kind of paid holiday from the government,
Right.
and you're expected by the society kind of to stay at home. So my most difficult thing was to fight with this expectation, because time to time you hear this, so you have this daughter, right? And you're not really with her, right? So this kind of internal judgment, right? But I
Yeah.
thought like if I stay at home, I would not be true to myself, and I just need to make it working to keep my own business, keep traveling, keep doing what I really like, but also be with her. So one of those things we try to do. So for example, this trip, I'm now in Chicago, right? And we have this longer trip in the US. So I am right now with my family, and we took a couple of weeks of holiday being here in Miami, going to, Caribbean for a while, etc. And I do, little classes before, a few classes after the conference. We just talk about the Agile Alliance thing, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's harder because there are days which you are completely out of the country, so you can be each evening at home. On the other hand, you have with your own business the flexibility to say, well, you know what, maybe I can just stay a week at home. And I don't like from beginning, morning to end, right? We can travel all together, things like that. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think you probably make those conscious decisions of, when to kind of go intense and when to kind of take it easy.
it's always a trade-off, right? Because it's never like perfect. So you're either like completely busy, or you're just like not having enough work, right? So it's always like a trade-off or something,
Yeah.
and it never works like perfectly like balanced.
Yeah.
But I guess at the end of the day, you make your own decisions, and that what's this freedom to make my own decision kind of keeps me in a good. My husband would sometimes say that I'm complaining that I'm too busy, right? But otherwise, to be really honest, it's like up and down, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I in general like it. Otherwise, I would stop doing it, right? So
Yeah, and I think what you just made, the statement you made makes a lot of sense. It's a trade-off, and I think those trade-offs are different and unique for everybody. And I think as women, we have to make those decisions and the calls that we make. Anything that aligns with our own, beliefs and passion.
And at the end
Makes a
of
lot
the
of sense.
day, when I travel for a like longer trip, and then I got Sunday off, it means I have it purely for myself. If I am having a day off at home, I don't really keep it for myself. So this travel actually gives me the unique opportunity to just be quiet and maybe spend a day
Yeah,
writing a book or things like that, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's not that like, kind of a
Good.
balance.
That's true. So you find your balance in the hectic schedule.
I try to, yeah.
That's really awesome. So you've been traveling for the past decade or even more. You've been speaking, you've been coaching, both individuals and organizations. I'll be
Mhm.
interested to know what are some of the trends that you've observed, Susie. Let's take the past decade where you've been very, very active in the community and coaching spaces. What are some of the trends that you observed, both good and bad?
I think when I started, it was mostly about technical IT software teams, right? Been talking about those technical practices all the time, etc. Where now I am in, but it's also part of it's my decision, right, of what I really want to do. As you see more organizational design, more like leadership things. So what I actually started recently is this certified agile leadership class, which is certified by the Scrum Alliance again. And what we see this gap between those teams who self-organized and those leaders on the top. So they kind of get more far from each other. And then the question is, how can I be an effective leader in this type of self-organizing organization? So we have a very different topics on a plate. So I started this 7-month leadership program on agile leadership, which
Mhm.
helps people to understand like how should I change myself,
Right.
and what are those concepts of building those agile organizations, and how can we manage them, how can we be successful with them. So I see more of those things. I started to do some work in agile HR, have talks at the conferences. I have again some trial Czech language tiny mini book for free pretty much for HR specialists, right?
That's it.
And things like that. So you didn't see those things 10 years ago. There was like purely team level, hey, people been talking about scaling, but from the framework perspectives. Now, I mean, scaling is important, but it's kind of gone.
Right.
I don't think people, organizations care about scaling. It's just another framework. Okay, you have several choices. Some of those are easier or nicer or more or less agile, but you know what? It's just a matter of frameworks solved. But now, how should we lead in this organization? How should we grow the people? What kind of culture we need to do? How should we change those functions like finance, right? So those all those
Mhm.
movements like beyond budgetings are in place now, and those interesting topics. So I find it really fascinating. And I'm a former developer, right? I've been writing code in like C++, very low level things, but I actually realize it's more fun to be at this leadership level and talk about culture and how people understand this. So, yeah.
And you think we are trending for better? We are progressing towards the better space.
Yeah. I see it's really optimistic because at the end of the day, Agile is a mindset. It is about the culture. And
Yeah.
unless you change that mindset, which means from individual perspective, it's how you look at things, but from the organizational perspective, that's really the culture. What are
Yeah.
the values? And I've been just having this conversation about like they've been asking about building a house, right? This kind of weird thing. I say, maybe not building the house, but if you have a house, how you make it your own house. So in a traditional way, you just get an architect and get like the list of all things you need to buy and things like that. And you know and in the agile world you just do this step by step thing, right? Hey, let's start with this one thing into my kitchen, and let's not do this. So can we do things in an iterative manner? That's part of that thing. Can
Right.
you be not functionally driven but value driven? Can we actively look for the feedback even if the feedback is really bad? Can we, and so on and so on and so on, right?
Yeah.
Those type of things. So
Yeah. No, it's I love to see this optimistic view of trending towards better, and I believe it personally, and it's nice to know. And I ask this, with every interviewee, as to, do you believe that we are trending for better? And the answer is a resounding yes. So it is great to know, and great
Yeah.
to know. So thank you for sharing that. So, you've been an author yourself, you speak and you train. What are some of the best learning resources you want to recommend to our audience, Zuzi? It could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be any learning resource.
Well, I think there are some obvious ones like Lisa Atkins, she has this book of coaching agile teams. There would be some specific ones for like, if you want to learn about user stories, you go to Mike and things like that. If you want to learn about scaling, go to Less, and
Yes.
things like that. But I would say my favorite was I prefer going to classes over or conferences, meaning seeing the people and experiencing the face-to-face over reading.
Yeah.
So I would say I started my journey on being a Scrum Master and on this Agile leadership as well by actually going to Agile Coaching Institute and those classes from Lisa Atkins about Agile coaching, Agile facilitation. So that was my ground. But then my real recommendation is go to the ORSC. Once you have a decent, like basic Agile coaching, Agile facilitation background, so you know what it is, some basic skills, go to ORSC. So, which is organizational relationship system coaching. That series of classes pretty much changed the way how I look at things, and it made a huge difference for me because I learned like what does that mean to coach at the team level, the system level, the organization level,
Yeah.
and they do a really great job on doing those things.
Yeah.
It's like 5 classes in a row, so it's a decent decision, right? I actually decided to travel to Toronto for those classes. So I've
Oh,
been like coming to Toronto and back for the classes. So if you think about, oh, it's not in my city, well, it was worse off even going from Prague to Toronto for them. So, and that really, I felt like this is important and this makes a difference.
yeah. And I heard a great deal about ORSC, organizational
Yeah.
relationship classes that you mentioned. So thanks for sharing that, because I know quite a few people who are doing it and have great things to talk about it. And especially if you're traveling from Prague to Toronto, that just says it all.
Yeah, pretty much. I love to travel on the other hand, right? So it doesn't mean like
Without
somebody
ad,
can never
yeah.
travel anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And, you were talking about earlier, you're going to talk in Agile Austria and the upcoming Agile Alliance
Yeah.
conference in Washington, D.C., my hometown. So
Yeah.
we look forward to seeing you here. We look forward to hearing you speak and bringing yet another great perspective or view to us. We're
Mm-hmm.
really looking forward to that, Zuzi, and I know I'm going to bump into you in many future conferences. And I'm
Looking
looking
forward
forward
to
to
see
all
you
of those.
anywhere, right?
And I would love to wrap up usually any interview with a message, or a quote or anything that just defined you, or that you swear by, you know in your career or your life, if you want to share.
I think it's a message which I learned from ORSC, from this organizational relationship system coaching, which I now teach the Scrum Masters and Agile leaders in a way, in
Yeah.
some specific concept. But the bottom line of that is in a complex world, right? There is no right or wrong.
Hmm.
So if you think about that, who knows what is right and what is wrong? Because whatever looks like a really bad thing which is happening to you might end up being really great in a longer term perspective, and vice versa. And in a simple cases like breaking down your phone seems to be a bad idea, but actually because you broke it, you might learn something, or you might decide to do things differently, and so
Yeah.
in a complex world, you can see all the consequences of whatever is happening right now. And it was actually giving me this kind of, I stopped questioning myself. I stopped questioning if that one thing which I did was good or bad, because it's neither or. It just, it's just happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So be aware what is happening. consider it for your next time decisions. And you know what? Don't judge completely. Like, stop judging things. So that's my agile leadership model, which is based on the the system, right? It says, like, get awareness of what is happening, be able to listen all those different perspectives, embrace it, which means, like, stop judging it. It's not good, it's not bad. There is always 2% of true on every of those. They are all right, but only partially. And then once you embrace this feeling, it gives you this quietness and this kind of a enjoyment, saying, like, okay, well, it happened, nice, what's next? And only then you're ready to act upon and change things. So this is my kind of a mantra for agile leadership, and it helped me a lot for myself, because before that I kept, like, questioning myself and thinking, is that good or was it bad? And now, you know what, at the end of the day, you let it go. It might take you still some time because you know, have it in your mind, but then you let it go and say, okay, well, go, let it go. Now let's focus on next time.
The future, you know, I love that. I think what you just said makes so much sense in this complicated world. There's really no right or wrong. It's the perspective and the experiences that you carry with you, you know, the lens with which you look at things. Awesome. So this was a fantastic conversation journey with you, Zuzi. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are honored to bring you on to LIA100. And, you know, we'll be meeting 75 more women in this journey.
Awesome.
So we'll keep you posted. Cool. And I look forward to seeing you and hearing you in Agile 2019.
Okay.
Looking
forward to see you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.